and you look in my eye.
How's it going, everybody? This is Jonny Vegas Namer here with Ministry of Lacrosse on the Ministry of Lacrosse YouTube channel, and I'm also associated with Lacrosse is Awesome. And my guest today, it's going to be a big show today. We have Tim Weston of Blue Collar Lacrosse and Marc Mesh, and this is the Marc Mesh interview. Tim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the introduction, Johnny. I'm flattered.
Yeah. Well, I want to invite everybody to join the chat on the YouTube channel. We've got the chat open there, so you guys feel free to chat live with us, ask us questions, and as we go on through the show, we'll be picking out questions. We'll give you a shout out, and yeah. So the YouTube channel is Ministry of Lacrosse. All right, and let's start off the interview right now. So let's first start off with Blue Collar Lacrosse. What is Blue Collar Lacrosse, and when did it launch?
Well, Blue Collar Lacrosse was incorporated in February 2008, exactly the same month they pinpoint with the recession starting, of course. But Blue Collar Lacrosse, we want to be the silent helpers, the exact same as that name implies on a team. And I had the good fortune of being able to play 4 years of lacrosse in the U.S., and I know that term blue collar lacrosse very well. It's the guy on the team who's, who if he sees the water bottles left at the end of practice, he doesn't look around. He picks them up and brings them. It's the guy who's always dragging the net in and out off the field, and also the guy picking up the ground balls. Sometimes the blue collar guy doesn't get his name on the game sheet, but he's there. It's a presence, and for us, blue collar lacrosse it's just all about working hard to be the best you can be in lacrosse.
Yeah, and now there's a lot of talk about Blue Collar Lacrosse and Marc Mesh, and why don't you just talk a little bit about about how good Marc Mesh is, because it really is the best mesh out there. It's often imitated but never duplicated. Talk about what makes Marc Mesh so good, and what makes it something that people want to buy and use.
And Johnny, I thank you for that, but I'm going to first answer your question with what Marc Leveille would say, which is that everybody has their opinion, and I can tell you from working with the pros, certainly there's guys that like other meshes, but by far, the teams that we work with and the people that we see, we know that they're using Marc Mesh for the most part, by a vast majority. That being said, some people do have preferences, and like Garrett Billings, for example, an interesting guy. He doesn't use a Marc Mesh. He actually uses a mesh that he had at the University of Virginia, and he changes it from stick to stick. So, it's a preference thing. But what makes Marc Mesh the ultimate wax mesh? And I mean, when you look at the stats that Marc Mesh has, you just can't argue with the success. We have videotapes of games where the points that total in a professional lacrosse game go over 90%. And that's pretty crazy when you think of 90% of all the points in a game, a professional lacrosse game, getting scored by players using Marc Mesh. That's not a coincidence, especially when we weren't sponsoring the league. This was their choice as to whether they use it or not. And so, what separates Marc Mesh is that first and foremost is Marc Leveille's patent. Marc Leveille, there may have been somebody who's put wax on mesh before, but Marc Leveille figured out a way to make it work. And anything about a U.S. patent, what people should know is that you don't it's not easy to get a patent. There's 7 million patents, and they've been going since 1790. So that's not a lot of patents. And the reason why is that it has to be innovative. It has to be the person who says they invented it that invented it, but it must work. It must solve that consumer problem. So first and foremost, it's Marc Leveille's patent. It's Marc Leveille's recipe for wax. He spent a good 10 years developing the waxes. Waxes have very, very a wide range of qualities, and Marc Leveille got his blend that it took him 10 years. And the other thing is the nylon. when we came into the business in 2008, I'm willing to put money on the fact that there was less than 5% of all the mesh out there that was made from nylon. It's a common misconception that it's nylon mesh. It's not. It's not. It's polypropylene or polyester, and that just simply is economics. Nylon's more expensive. It's harder to get a hold of, and for us, the reason we went with nylon was when Marc and I did get together. The one thing I brought was I lived with two guys that were playing for the Toronto Rock. I had some friends on Team Canada. The most important to the development of Marc Mesh being a guy named Sean Williams. Although that being said, Jamie Taylor, little tidbit, he's the first guy to play with a Marc Mesh. He played with the Toronto Rock for a while, Minnesota Swarm. He also did some articles for Inside Lacrosse. But Jamie Taylor was the first guy with a Marc Mesh to actually do something of note, and that was beat Johnny Grant Jr., the only guy to beat Johnny Grant Jr. for a junior A scoring title the 4 years that John Grant played. But a little bit of an asterisk, John Grant was away at Delaware for the first part of the season. But yeah, Jamie Taylor, one of the guys that was testing out on, but Sean Williams and all these guys that we gave the netting to, because the people that were going to manufacture it for us, they were trying to push us towards polyester and those things because they were already doing it, and that's what they work with. For nylon, you're going into climbing rope territory and parachutes and stuff like that. They weren't working with this stuff, so it's hard to find somebody that works with it. And it took about 8 months, where I could have, in less than a week, found a distributor, a manufacturer of like a polyester mesh. It took about 8 months to find somebody that could actually work with the nylon. And the reason we went with the nylon is that in a blind study with all of these guys, we would give them the mesh. And if you recall years back, the mesh sometimes would come with a blue line down the side or a red line down the side. And that indicated what material it was made from. And, but aside from that, we put them through a blind study. And every single time it was nylon. So that's why we took that extra leap. And finally, because we were able to find a manufacturer of that quality, you can see in our enhanced texture ridges, the weave that comes together. It's got a lot of surface, a lot of ridges and friction, and it gives you that additional bit of feel. But ultimately, this all comes together, Marc Mesh, to give you pocket memory, which when we first started working with the pros, over 90% of them use a soft mesh, because the most important thing in pro is to catch the ball and hold the ball. You can't throw the ball unless you've done that. And the problem with that mesh was it took forever to break in. And same with the hard mesh. And with Marc Mesh, what you ended up having is that pocket memory where it's like a soft when you're catching and running with the ball. It retains its pocket memory like a hard mesh when throwing, giving you the benefit of that. And it turned out to be weather resistant. That was a side effect Marc wasn't even going for. He was just going for performance. And that's why Marc Mesh is different. These other people's meshes, it's unfortunate, but these a lot of them to me are social media startup companies. They're not lacrosse companies, guys that started off with players and going for the best product they could make, and it shows in the product they put out because they use cheaper material. They use like candle waxes for the most part, and it's unfortunate because with one word, infusion, they're able to imply that they're doing something just as good as Marc Mesh. But no, Marc Mesh has a U.S. patent, and there's a big leap between the two of them.
Yeah. Now, a patent is huge, and it also costs a lot for you guys to get that patent and to keep that patent. So I could definitely see that frustration would occur when other companies don't have that patent and didn't put in the money and work to get that patent, and they're making a lot of money off of what you guys work so hard to make and bring to the industry. What is your patent, and explain just like some of the aspects of it that other companies should not touch?
Well, and I'm gonna veer away from this question, Johnny, because it's not
Okay.
It's not wise of me to talk about what our patent covers. It's wax mesh. It's quite simple. It isn't rocket science. There's something simple to everything anybody can do. But ultimately, what that patent's telling you is that we have a way of injecting the butter, the mesh butter, the wax, into the center of that nylon, where it lasts a very long time, and it does a lot to change the performance as well, enhance the performance.
Yeah, well, great answer, and that's definitely a good thing to do is to not say what the patent entails, because as you can see, even without knowing it, there's companies that are trying to get in on what you guys are doing, and it just shows that you guys know what you're doing, and you guys have been doing it for so many years. I know you guys. It says on the website that Marc Leveille started this Marc Mesh about. Let's see. It says. Why don't you tell me a little bit? I'm looking for it on the website, but I think you said decades ago or something.
Oh, Marc Leveille was a stick stringer here in Burlington that everybody knew. Anybody in the lacrosse world here knew Marc for two reasons. One, as a stick stringer. Number two, he's a personality. He's when when you become friends with Marc, he's loud. He's less than 2 inches away from you when he talks. He's passionate. And I mean, if you get him going about lacrosse, I've been on plane flights with him where people getting off the plane were like talking about the fact that they're going to go home and and watch the NCAA final. And we even got an email once from a guy that we met 9 months earlier who sent in a reply that, hey, tell Marc I watched the NCAA final and loved it. And that's Marc. He's just that way. So Marc was a stick stringer, and because he was working with so many people, he had compiled a lot of mesh. You have to keep in mind, at the time, there was a time where all the lacrosse netting was made from nylon because it didn't make sense to make it out of that other stuff. It's because of economics and the fact that other stuff costs 50, 60, 70% less that you end up, with this stuff. Manufacturers went to that because it's just economics. They make more of a profit margin. So with Marc, he compiled a whole load of meshes, and he was able to experiment, and he experimented with everything and anything. It was anything he could get his hands on, and he stumbled across the wax. It was actually his son, Joel, who was the first one to work with it. And the way Marc and I met was Joel was 14 years old. I was an assistant coach of the U19 lacrosse team for Burlington here, team that had Merrick Thompson on it, by the way, NCAA coach at Albany, and had the scoring title 1 year. But Joel was 14 and just a sniper. And he made this team of predominantly 18-year-old kids. And when the other coach and I looked at his stick, we were like, hey, who did this for you? What is this? He was like, oh, my dad does this, because we'd never seen nothing like it, and started throwing with it. It was awesome. And so, yeah, Marc had stumbled upon wax by working with his son, and he tried a million things. He would string him a new stick every day, and eventually Joel has surpassed Marc in the stringing department. But, that's how he came across it, and that's how we came across Marc. And, it's funny because the head coach and I were like, oh, we got to get this guy on as our trainer, so everybody has one of these sticks. And we asked him to come on as our trainer, excuse me, and Marc came back the next day for practice. He had a fishing tackle box that, I kid you not, was like 6 feet wide, opened up to like have a million shelves. And we always used to brag that we could have a kid who like helmet blew up on the field, and we could call a 30-second timeout and have that same kid back on the field with Marc as our trainer. He just had everything. There wasn't anything missing. And that's just the type of research, and don't even know what material to buy, yet alone, to experiment with the waxes. Because I can tell you, the waxes that we're using are, you'd find them, the only way to find these waxes is to have a connection with a wax supplier. And I mean, these aren't candle waxes. They're not beeswaxes. They are high quality waxes that you would find like food grade waxes and stuff like that. So, and there's a difference in price too, a huge difference in price, probably a bigger difference in price in that than there is from nylon to polyester. But yeah, that's how Marc discovered it. That's how Marc and I kind of came together, and I hope I answered that question all right.
Yeah, and that was good. And now with the internet, and I know you guys have been doing videos, just like talking about your mesh and just like some of the pros that have been using it. And along with the internet comes trolls, and a lot of trolls oftentimes like to put their foot in their mouth before they know what they're talking about. So, in case in point, some internet trolls constantly accuse you guys of slander when you guys are talking about something about the mesh as opposed to East Coast mesh. However, what these trolls fail to understand is that the truth is not slander. So please shut these internet trolls down. Tell them, the situation. The truth is not slander.
Well, finally, you're going to get to hear the story from Blue Collar side, which is, I can remember, I think it was a Tuesday morning, but Mark and Joel were with the Buffalo Bandits that weekend, and working with the team. And on Tuesday morning, here we are listening to, East Coast Guys, the president of it, talking about an incredible weekend that player had. And you can imagine the silence of us looking at this because, I looked at Joel and was like, is this true? And Joel was like, no. Like, Joel had his stick in his hand before the game. In the warm-up was throwing with it because, like, one of the benefits to being us is Mark and Joel are normally working. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been alone in a 17,000 seat stadium where there isn't a popcorn vendor, there isn't nobody inside the building, and I'm just trying to hit the crossbar. It's a beautiful thing. So yeah, Joel's lacrosse guy, he would pick up sticks, and here we are watching a video of this guy talking about the points that he got on the weekend and where he stands in the league and stuff. And at the time was in the 5th spot. And up until that point, he had never ever recorded a single point in a game using that mesh. And on top of that, there were 3-minute long videos of game footage. And the title would imply that this guy's using that mesh, and he wasn't. It's not for 1 second in that game footage, was he? And there's others too, but I'm not going to divulge anymore because I hope to have the day where in a similar podcast like this, I get to confront the East Coast guys because I got a laundry list of stuff that they're doing that's just outright wrong. And what you got to remember is this: in doing this, nobody can tell what a lacrosse mesh is what. I can't tell unless I'm physically there and able to touch it. Maybe if you get the camera close enough, I'd be able to tell, but you have to be there to touch it. So these things are going unchecked because it's social media. You can say whatever you want. It's hard to keep it in place. And, it's like a guy named Jeff Dudley at Inside Lacrosse told me. On the lacrosse forums, when we came out with goalie mesh, there was a guy who claimed to be from Texas or somewhere around there, saying that he used our goalie mesh, and every time he caught the ball, a plume of wax flew into his face, and so he couldn't see. He was having problems breathing. At the time, we had given out 4 pieces of mesh, and it was all 4 of them were given to NLL goalies. That's it. That's it. So, when I spoke to Jeff, I explained to him this is an outright lie, and all he said to me was, "Hey, listen, this is the way it is now. This is the day and age it is. You're in an internet fight," and he's like, "I don't know what to tell you. Start fighting." So, those words resonated to me, and now, because if somebody doesn't say something, then this isn't going to get checked. And I hate to say it, but there's these companies that steal ideas rather than innovate, research, and develop ideas and add to the lacrosse community. Instead, what they're doing is taking away those ideas from those companies that innovate, research, and develop those ideas, and they essentially are trying to kill that company. They're parasites that are trying to kill that company, and then what's the lacrosse world left with but this empty shell of a company that's only going to steal every idea that comes along and cheapen it down and use it for their own means. It's unfair because we have stuff. We've been working on other meshes, and there's one mesh that I can tell you. It's been on our social media. It's called Marc Mesh with Gator Grip, and thanks to the process of Marc's Mesh patent, it's something that easily transfers over. But essentially, what it's like is like adding sandpaper to the surface of your mesh. It's adding sand, but we've borrowed a lab. We've rented a lab. I've asked the University of Toronto if we can have their lab to finish this off. But, with a little more money, we'd be coming out with that next generation. But when we have so many people, no question, social media wise, these guys are head and shoulders above us. Like when we were watching that video, we didn't even have a Facebook page. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have Twitter. I'm 43 years old. Mark's older than me, and Joel's not that much younger. So, we didn't realize the impact that this social media thing was going to have. Otherwise, we would have done it sooner. But it's, it's something that now we're catching up, and now it's time for some people to pay the piper for their actions. Because I'll tell you, we've never put up a video that tells people falsely about the pros using our stuff. And if I was to talk about a player on the weekend that used that stuff, I would have phoned them. I would have phoned them that morning and asked them, "Were you using our stick?" Make sure. because it's unfair not to do your due diligence. And, like I said, he never used that mesh in his stick to that point. And the ironic thing about that player is he actually was pressured into switching. He did switch, and he switched because he tried it. He thought he liked it, but at the time, he was 5th in the league for points. He dropped outside of the top 20. First playoff game, he switched back to Marc Mesh, 10 points. Next playoff game, 11 points. And that's the way it goes. Now try to get him to switch.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
But it's always good to try stuff. Don't ever just be satisfied with one thing. It's always great to try stuff. Like with the 20 and 15 millimeter, the 20 millimeter, we really wanted to start with a 15 millimeter. When the mesh came in, it was a 20 millimeter mesh. There was some confusion, but the 20 millimeter mesh, it's a good mistake, because anybody who's actually learned to string the 20 millimeter, and I like the words of Gerald Raganese. He's a moderator from the forums, and people were saying, I can't string the 20, I can't string the 20, and he was saying it's not a mesh problem, it's a stringer's problem. Those are his words. And it's that 20 millimeter mesh can't be beat. It's the closest thing to the diamonds that you get on a leather pocket. It's got the best hold, it's got the best catching ability, and as long as you know how to string it, you're all day, because it is larger diamonds, the same as our 15 mil. I call it's called 15 mm because we were tying the name Marc Mesh and the idea of a measurement millimeters together. But there's no correlation between millimeters and the 15 and 20. One, you don't put a ruler up to it and it follows that thing. We just call it 15 and 20 mm because it's round numbers, a little play on words, a little bit of a knot there with the Marc Mesh and the millimeter coming together. But often I call it millimeter because I use a verbal dictation program to write out some of my stuff, and it just writes mm for me. So I always just say millimeters. And but fact of the matter is our 15 diamonds are bigger, and the 20 diamonds even bigger than that. And I can tell you from all the pros that we worked with, most of them, between the guys using Marc Mesh 15 millimeter, 20 millimeter, most of them use 20 millimeter. And the reason being, obviously, in pro, they either can string sticks really well themselves, and that's the case for a lot of pros, or they have a friend on the team or a stringer that they've always trusted that does a great job for them. And I will say this: the one reason stringers do have a problem with the 20 millimeter is, one, the diamond size is bigger, but also when you string nylon, what you have to understand is nylon breaks in. It has that ability to absorb the impact, and then it recoils. But for that first little bit, there's that tiny bit of break-in, and that gives you that signature pocket along with the MeshButter.
Yeah.
So
now,
just let me say this, Johnny, a lot of people have used the word bag out. It's not bagging out, it's breaking in.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, and all this talk and stuff. In your video, you said one of the quotes is "Beware of the East Coast fog effect." I'll let you explain that, and then I have some comments about that too, because I definitely see that effect happening.
Well, the East Coast fog effect is just it's putting up false information on the internet, and it poisons it. That's that's what it is. And the reason it's poisoning is because I coach a lot of age group. This year I coached 11-year-olds. When they go to the internet, they wholeheartedly believe it, and so do people that are new to the game. Like there's a lot of parents that go to the internet and watch these videos and think, because this person's put up this video, they know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, I go to the video where they introduce their pocket polish, their that wax in a deodorant stick, and to put that onto a mesh and think that you're getting the same value as a Marc Mesh, that's a fallacy. But then they're talking about putting it on your gloves and on your shaft of your stick. And I to this day I've never met a professional player that does that. I would question if he himself does that. You know what I mean? So why are you putting up videos telling people this? It's a $10 piece of deodorant stick of wax. Like is that it? It must be more. It must be money orientated, because there's no value to that deodorant stick of wax. If anybody's using it, please let me know. I would love to know. But hey, wax on a lacrosse mesh turned out to be the next greatest idea in lacrosse. Wax all over your equipment. I mean, it got crazy, right? And so that's what I call the fog. Yeah, that's what I call the fog effect. Anybody that spent $10 on that stick of wax and thinks they're getting a wax mesh or doing themselves a favor by rubbing it on the palms of their gloves or the shaft of their stick is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And it might just end up ruining your gloves or making them wear down faster, and then you have to get a new pair of gloves, which in effect just gets more money out of your parents' pockets. So maybe that's like a deal or something. They have like you put it on your gloves and then you have to get a new pair of gloves soon. So I don't know.
Well, I would hate to think it's as sinister as that, but yeah, I mean, hockey, all these sports. Anybody, have you ever heard of somebody putting wax on your gloves? And here's a person who's the president of one of these top-notch companies, which, like I said, they're social media startups, and I'm not a computer guy, but I'll tell you this: their rise to success to me very much mirrors the music industry back in the day on YouTube when they were faking views and stuff like that. And YouTube put out an algorithm and said to the 4 major brands, they said to them, listen, guys, we're putting up this algorithm. You're forgiven for anything you've done to date, but we're putting up this algorithm. And if we find out that you're putting up fake views, then we're going to take your account that's going to be eliminated from YouTube. The view count went down by 2 billion views a day. That's 2 billion views a day. And then I was watching a program on the CBC. And these people snuck a camera into one of these internet companies, these social media companies. And this guy was saying, that the cost of 12,500 views was $5. That's what it was. You want 24,000? Give us 10. And this was a company who was the CBC in Canada was running a show, and so while I can't say they have, hey, if their popularity is genuine, this is my opinion, what I was saying. If their popularity is that genuine, I'm shocked. I'm shocked as to how the content in their videos at the time could blow away a Paul Rabel video. The greatest guy in the game, and Paul Rabel's putting up videos that barely break 10,000. They got stuff that have a guy just sitting there talking about whipping his stick, and he's getting 70,000. To me, the numbers didn't match, and that's in my opinion why when I saw that thing on the music company and how people fake their success on social media. That's great. I mean, like trolls are, to me, there's like 2 phases of the trolls. And at first I call them fairies. And when they're fairies is you create a false ID on the internet and you talk up your product. Holy smokes, man. Just used Marc Mesh. Can't believe it. We got hit by a typhoon and my stick didn't change. Those are fairies, but they turn into trolls when they start attacking other people. That's when they turn into trolls. And, and as far as I'm concerned, again, that one company, do you ever hear me say something bad about Throne? Do you ever hear me say something bad about String King or, Gonzo Mesh? No. And I'll tell you why. It's because I don't feel like we've ever been trolled by those guys. We have definitely been trolled. It's without question. Again, my opinion, but without question, I wouldn't have focused towards them so much if it wasn't for the fact that I'm tired of going on the internet and every time we post something, somebody putting up a rant about something that it has nothing to do with, absolutely nothing to do with, and that's a troll, right? Because you put up something nice, and then nobody wants to comment because you got this like military like troll making comments in your thing, and the lacrosse community would be doing itself a favor to stand up and step up to these guys. That's if you got an opinion, put it up there, because I'll tell you, when this whole thing started, while I'm not getting a lot of support on those social medias, you got to understand these people don't want to get attacked by these trolls. They're not going to get into that fight. But let me tell you, I get emails from professional lacrosse players, professional lacrosse teams coaches, professional teams GMs, professional teams owners that have said, keep up this fight. Like, what you're doing is awesome. So, I have to weigh it like that. While on social media, it looks like an absolute slaughter. It isn't. There's, we're doing just fine. Yeah. The right people know us.
Yeah. It's a matter of smoke and mirrors, with these, what you're talking about with views that are inflated by buying them. And you can even buy Facebook likes. You can buy, you can buy subscribers. You can buy I mean, it goes so far how many things you can buy, and it's for such a small amount. Literally, like you said, $5 for thousands and thousands of views. And
Well,
yeah,
Johnny, what the CBC company did was they created a food truck, and with what they did, there was never a food truck. This food truck never existed, and they had a huge social media presence on it, and they showed you how people manipulate the system. They had acquired over like 40 reviews. You know what I mean? By people that were like,
yeah,
"Oh, I ate this thing. It was awesome." And it was just, that's all it was you'd go in there and these companies explain it. Oh, we got all these personalities. We put the comments up for you. And yeah, this it's unfortunate because, you know, with a social media, the truth is that when people care and people put down the right information, positive things happen, even to the point where some, you know, parents have been able to diagnose kids, infants, or illnesses that the doctors couldn't even figure out. Like there's stories of
yeah,
mothers that have, through the internet and talking with other mothers that actually were having this problem, figured out stuff that not even the doctor knew. And you know,
yeah,
that's where the internet has done great. But when it comes to lacrosse, the trolling and the lying, the misconception, the misleading, it's got to
yeah,
stop. You know, like, you know, I can tell you, like I said, with the lacrosse forums, you know, how many people read that post where this guy's talking about the fact that every time he catches a ball, it blows up in his face and, you know, and
yeah,
everything like that, and believe it. You know, like it's sad
yeah,
because a lot of people do. A lot of people just tune in. And you know, I was watching a thing on 60 Minutes, and it was talking about the fact that, you know, if you're swindled or bamboozled on the internet, you're half at fault. It's, you know, half the fault of the people who do it, but it's your fault too for being so naive that you believe it. But for me, where the lacrosse world changes is that most of the people in the lacrosse world are high school age and younger. That's the general populace of this game.
yeah,
At university, it tapers off, and then men's league even more so. Professionals, I
yeah,
mean, that's the best of the best. Less than half of 1% ever. I think that would even be inflated. But that's where I have a problem with it, is that a lot of these people aren't even adults, and they go on the internet and just believe this stuff. So when you
yeah,
do put up information, make sure it's correct. Make sure you've taken the time to do your due diligence, and that's what we've done. That's we've
yeah,
always done that, and you know, keeping in mind, we also felt it very important to be transparent with people about our product, because we wanted them to be able to make a decision, and an educated decision. So for that person who likes to research and use Google, they can look up what we're talking about. They can now look at our patent. They can look at nylon. When you Google nylon, everything comes up, from its history to its chemistry, its actual chemistry breakdown, like the hydrogen, the atoms itself, and then the benefits of nylon, and the benefits or the qualities of nylon, because some of them aren't benefits. The fact is, it's hydrophobic, so it soaks up water, but that's where the mesh butter comes in. No water is able to get into that nylon. That's like peanut butter and chocolate coming together, and so long as you're not allergic to peanut butter. But the you know, the yeah, the sorry, I lost myself on that glitch. I lost myself with
oh,
the
no
peanut butter
worries.
comment. Well, what was the question again?
Oh, no, I was just saying that when
Oh,
you were talking about when you're researching,
yeah,
Googling
sorry,
nylon, you get all the, yeah,
sorry, Johnny. My point to this being that a lot of the people that look up lacrosse stuff truly look at it from a wide open, wide-eyed point of view, that they just assume that what they're getting told is the real deal. A lot of them, the general population, is not adults, and you know, I can tell you, it's unfair. It's unfair when somebody goes to the internet. They just want to get their kid the best product, and with nylon, like I said, you can Google it. There's a whole load of information. You look up what some of these other companies are doing and Google the material they tell you it's made out of on the box, and all it does is lead you to information they have loaded the internet up with. And for a 10-year-old, they read all those catchy words and they think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it ain't nothing. Like with Blue Collar Lacrosse, I can tell you, working with the pros was so intimidating at first. It really was. Like when you go into a
yeah,
room, they we had to like when we introduced wax mesh, everybody thought wax. It just didn't make sense because people assumed wax with a lubricant and something that makes things go smoother. And you didn't want smoother. You wanted more feel. You wanted more grip. And so at first people couldn't believe it. But when you walk into a pro team's room, I'll tell you, when you get a chance to talk, there's nobody moving, nobody fidgeting around. Every eyeball is on you, and they are listening intensely. and there's no feeling like it. It's a lot different than going onto the internet and telling people, oh, this guy's using our stuff when you haven't even been there. Yeah, and and even though these guys are sponsoring the league, you got to understand, we got league passes, like passes to go to any stadium that we want from the league itself, and I'm talking both NLL and MLL, to go visit these teams and be with these teams because so many people wanted our service. I could, there's been plenty of times where MLL teams have been coming to town, and we get an email. Some kid's stick isn't with it, so can you help us out? We'll meet them at the hotel. We'll meet them at the bus at the airport, and stringing sticks there like this. We've put in some hard work, and to get this thing off the ground. It wasn't easy. We invested a lot of our time and a lot of our money, and I'll leave the question at that. But the people on the internet, a lot of them are too naive, and unfortunately for most of them, it's not their fault. They're not even adults.
Yeah. And I'll definitely agree with that point too. Just like when you grow up idolizing certain pros like Casey Powell, Kyle Harrison, Gary Gate, all these pros, Paul Rabel, and then for me getting the chance to play against them in the Hawaii Lacrosse Invitational each year, and like just the fact that you're on the same playing field as them and you're both trying to win the tournament. Granted, that team has a bunch of professional lacrosse players, all guys you idolize. So you're going into the game, pretty much knowing that there's not really a chance to win, but just the fact that that team and those pros are treating you just like they treat any other team. They're going to play as hard as they can. And then afterwards, they're the coolest people. And just like for me, being able to interview all these guys on my podcast, YouTube channel, and then getting to play against them, I mean, I probably know on a first name basis, I'd say 80% of the MLL and some of the NLL, a lot of LXM pros. And whenever we see each other, they're very cool. And it just kind of really shows this lacrosse community how small of a world it is, and then also how different it is than like the NBA or the NFL or MLB. You'd never have in those sports be able to play against Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan in a tournament, in like a very competitive tournament. Lacrosse is different in that form.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's I was lucky enough to one year make the Peterborough Lakers up here. It was at the time, John Grant Jr. and Tracy Kaliski were in junior A lacrosse, but they would come up to the senior team and play once in a while. And we would play teams that would have the Gates, John Tavares, Dewey Jacobs, Mike Keenan, like guys that I just looked so high up to. And there was one game sheet that had all those names on it, I think. And I was trying to steal the game sheet at the end of it, right? I just, I was so happy. I recorded a point that game, I'm pretty sure. I was going to try to steal the game sheet, right? It was something I wanted to frame. But, you touched on something, and that is this lacrosse community. It's a different sport. Lacrosse, I remember a speech that a captain made for New England College. He wasn't a captain. Well, he might have been a captain. He was the goalie. His name was McCabe, and I'll never forget it. This speech was said about 25 more years ago to me, and it's a speech that I'll never forget. And that was, that lacrosse players, if you walk into I'll say a bar, if you walk into a bar and you see another guy with a lacrosse jacket, he's your friend, he's your buddy. You guys got a connection. Two guys from hockey, football, or other sports walk into a bar and they see a guy with the other team's jacket, they're not friends. They're not likely to they're less, like with lacrosse. There's always been that connection where it doesn't matter what team you play on, you're a lacrosse player. You bridge the gap with other lacrosse players. But that being said, it is a very when it comes down to it, the game itself is very rival orientated. It's all or nothing. And but that social atmosphere, you're right, they're the most relaxed people. The professionals that play this game, you mentioned the name Casey Powell. I cannot in my life. He's like the Wayne Gretzky of lacrosse to me, and I'm not just talking about on the floor. I'm talking about off the floor. He is just a beauty. I've seen games where he wasn't playing with this one game in New York. He's sitting in the stands and he's frustrated because he wasn't playing. Obviously, he had Casey Powell's out the lineup because something's injured him. He's never going to be a healthy scratch. And he, while sitting there, must have had at least a dozen teams, like approximately 150 kids go by him and get autographs. And it was just to the very last one, he was sitting there joking with them, signing stuff,
Yeah.
And I know him. That's the way he like as Jody Gage, he's the general manager for the Rochester Knighthawks, has watched Casey Powell walk out to go to the bus. As he tells me, walk out to go to the bus. Some kids there, and Casey picks up the kid's stick, throws it a little bit, and says, "Hey, you want my stick?" And this kid's like, "What?"
Huh.
Walking away with Casey Powell's stick, and obviously Jody Gage as a general manager is like, "What's Casey doing?" Right? But that's Casey
Yeah.
Powell. He is an ambassador of this game. It humbles me when I see how well he does to promote this game. And his I think they have a new stick line now. Yes, they have a new stick line now, and
Yeah.
I can only imagine his camps. I haven't seen him, but I would have to think he puts a lot of time into them because that's just the type of person he comes off of. Yeah, these lacrosse players, it's a smaller world, and as the Native Americans say, it's a spiritual contest. Sorry, it's a physical contest. Oh gosh, I'm missing it. Physical contest, spiritual journey, and a cultural bond. And that cultural
Yeah.
bond, you gotta love lacrosse for it.
Yeah. Oh, and I just want to let everybody know that's going to watch this. So for some reason, sometimes you have problems with YouTube. So we went live, a little bit after we said, and for some reason, it's not live right now, but it will be put up. It goes right up, like I'd say 5-10 minutes after when you do these, pre-taped ones or whatever. So unfortunately, the link, if you're trying to get on the link, or if you were trying to get on the link on the YouTube channel, it's not up yet. It will be up soon once we're done doing this. But yeah, and then we'll do more of these too where they're live. But yeah, and another thing also, I heard that Marc Mesh will be working with Johns Hopkins, providing
Oh,
mesh.
no. What that
Oh,
was in 2008, because you were asking about what it was like when we got started working with the pros
oh
and,
yeah, yeah,
and stuff like that. And in 2008, ultimately, what happened was we were invited to the Rochester Knighthawks training camp, and Sean Williams was the guy that invited us. And when we got there, a funny story. The first thing that happened was Sean standing in front of the dressing room, and Stephen Toll goes up and he gives him his lacrosse stick and says, "Sean, restring this for him." And like there's an hour to go before they're about to start their practice. And so Sean, now had Mark doing his sticks, and takes his stick and hands it to Mark. And Toll looks at Willie, looks at Mark, grabs his stick back, like, who is this guy? And he gives it back to Willie, and he's like, Willie, you got to string my stick. And Willie's like, now this guy's going to string your stick, Steven. And Steven was like, So Willie hands him the stick, and Steven goes over, and he's like, all right, who are you? And, Mark, I'm Marc Leveille. And Steven's like, okay, well, listen to, can you string this identical to what I have? And Mark was like, well, I could, but you're not going to like it. And Steven's like, well, what do you mean I'm not going to like it? And he's like, well, it's strung crooked. And he's like, what do you mean it's strung crooked? And so he starts counting out the sidewall pattern with him, showing him how it lined up along the top and sidewalls. And it was crooked. Stephen Toll didn't quite get that. He just shook his head and said, all right, is it going to be ready for like game time and for the practice time? And Mark was, oh yeah, no problem. So Stephen Toll comes out, and Stephen Toll's one of those like loud guys. Like Stephen Toll is one of those guys in a bus. You're guaranteed to hear him. He's quite a character. So he goes out there, and he's using this stick, and he's ripping top corners. And every top corner he rips, he's putting on a show in terms of his after goal dances. And after that practice, we had 8 guys. My favorite, Chris Schiller, walked by, dropped off 3 sticks, put it in there, and so we did. Mark, we ended up, what happened was we started with the Knighthawks, then Buffalo practiced at the same facility, and Buffalo heard about us about 2 weeks before the season started because the owner of the rink, this guy Ange, a heart of gold, and this is a good thing to talk about in the lacrosse community, but this guy Ange, I'll tell you a story in a second. This guy Ange goes up to the Buffalo trainers, and he's like, hey, why are all your guys like fiddling with their sticks and punching their pockets when they get back together, when the coach is talking to them? He's like, you got to see Rochester. Rochester has this guy doing their sticks. And when the team all comes together, they all just look at the coach. And so Buffalo was like, what? Who are these guys? So we ended up getting invited out with Buffalo. And, it's a small world. So the word was eventually going to spread. And so we strung sticks for Buffalo. And then Toronto had heard as well. So we ended up stringing a bunch of sticks for Toronto. And what happened was the week the season started, we got a call from the league official supplier of equipment at the time. And they told us that, we're treading a fine line, and they didn't want us being around these NLL teams. And come the first week, when it came to the first game, those three teams that we worked with, no less than 70% of those players had switched to the new sticks that the sponsor was. And the rest of the teams, most of them didn't even have a single guy, and some of them had one or two. But for the three teams we worked with, over 70%, all of them using Marc Mesh, and I'd say a good half of those sticks strung by Marc or Joel. And so we ended up getting a call 2 weeks later from that manufacturer, and they were like, "Hey guys, have at it. Go visit every team. You got our blessing." And next thing you know, we got the guest passes, that allow you to be anywhere you want in this arena, and it's really cool. It's been a great trip that way. And so that's how we started working with the pros. And then after working with the pros, some word went from pro lacrosse, because there were some John Hopkins players in pro lacrosse, and word got back to the university, and we were invited by the captains. And I think it was Clover Hill or something like that was the street address. But it was pretty crazy, because we showed up at the captain's house, and we got there, like, it took a little longer to get to Baltimore. It took us about 8 hours, because Baltimore, the roads are crazy when you get there. It's like built around a harbor, so they're circular as opposed to square. You can get mixed up. But we finally get to the house, and when we got there, like, you want to talk about intimidating, like it was to go in front of the pro teams and talk. There we were in, the captain's house, the living room. They have this huge L-shaped couch, which all the senior players were sitting on. The juniors and sophomores were kind of mixed in that, and then the freshmen, were on the floor. And I recall the freshmen had blazers on. I can't recall if they had ties, but it was cool. It was John Hopkins lacrosse. Like, these guys, you couldn't ask for any cooler experience than that, to be at the epicenter of this game at Homewood Field. The Hall of Fame is just a stone's throw away. And so, we ended up stringing sticks for them. One player used one of the sticks in the next game. However, he strung it himself. It was a guy named Mike Donger. And in the next day, he led the team with goals and 3 points. So he led the team. Unfortunately, they lost to UNC. But the interesting thing about that, UNC was practicing at Homewood Field. And as we're walking by, we have these sticks with the 2-color meshes in them. Everybody on the practice field was looking at them. And an assistant coach came over and said, "Hey, are you guys those guys making that mesh?" And we're like, "Yeah, we are." And so they were like, "Hey, can you do us a huge favor?" He brought over the drawman, and it was this freshman who was going to be filling in for the regular drawman. And he had a stick he liked, but it was it wasn't thrown for him. So he gives it to Joel, and Joel looks at it, and he's like, and again, the whole thing, "Can you string it?" "Absolutely, no problem." "Do the same thing?" "No problem." "But you're not going to like it." And the guy was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, look at it." And he holds it up to him, and it was crooked. So what we had to do for him was go back to the John Hopkins house, and you can imagine how it was like oil and water, right? Bringing another team sticking, but it became a funny experience, because what happened was Marc and Joel went and pinched the stick, and they showed these guys how they pinch it. At the time, these guys thought putting it in the oven was good. You always want to boil plastic, because it keeps the hydrogen bond in there, keeps the hydrogen inside of it. If you put it in the oven, that hydrogen bond breaks down, because you suck the hydrogen out of there. So these guys, and not only that, they can make you a stick, both put in like a offset, and they can make the whole head of the stick exactly to the millimeter what size you want it. And they use turnkeys and everything like that. And it was my favorite part of the whole trip was walking into the kitchen, and there were so many people packed in there that, people were cross-legged on the floor. It was row after row, and this was John Hopkins University. It was just absolutely nuts. But that kid used that stick the next day as a drawman. I think he recorded a point. So, every time we've gone somewhere, that seems to be the case. Sticks are used the very next day, including we were once invited by both the team that was leading the media poll and the team that was at the top of the coaches poll. And they invited us to come down and string sticks. Fortunately, they were meeting that week, so we got to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But it's incredible to go through a day like that when you're in the stadium and you see these guys do their throw arounds. And, we're blessed for being able to do the job that we do. I love it. It's can't ask for any better.
And now, what is Timmy's Targets? Or Timmy Targets by Blue Collar Lacrosse? I'm looking at that on the website. It looks kind of cool. There's a video too.
They are cool. Timmy Targets were born. I was coaching at the University of Toronto, and we always used to, because your goaltenders, you can only ask so much for them in a practice, and we always used to have to tie up a shirt. And then there was the famous argument: did you hit the shirt or didn't you hit the shirt? So the Timmy Targets, what it was, one day in the warehouse, Marc had taken out a goalie mesh from a stick, and I saw the way that it curved, and I was like, I wonder if you tie off the bottom, if it would be able to catch the ball. And so what happened was I tied off the bottom, and this was in February in Canada, and so it's super cold out. And I go outside, and I'm trying to hit this target, and I can't hit it for like 25 minutes. Finally, I hit this thing, and it spins around the crossbar because there was no netting inside of the net. It spins around the crossbar. I'll tell you, must have been 100 times. It was so cool. That's the sort of energy that's in it. And the ball remained in there. So what ended up happening was I then, put it into a net with netting in it, and you would take that shot and the ball would fall out there. It would hit that back and fall out. So I took chopsticks, and the first Timmy Target was actually manufactured out of chopsticks, which was great because it caught the ball, but it lasted what? Like those chopsticks would blow up to the point where sometimes you couldn't even find it anymore. And so what it was is it's a target that catches the ball. So it's great. I've seen it. I have hours and hours of footage at NLL practices, and sometimes the goalies don't care. They'll leave it up in the top corner. If they don't like it, they'll just flip it over to the back. It's no longer in their way, no longer a part of the net. But a lot of the players love it in warm-up because a lot of lacrosse players, when they shoot at a lacrosse goal, they either shoot at the post or they shoot at the crossbar. And the thing about this is, if you shoot at the post and you're shooting overhand, like you should shoot, you're gonna line up with that post. So while you're hitting the post, you're not giving yourself a good idea as to where you are on that height scale. Then when you shoot at the crossbar and you go sidearm, once again, you're going to go along that plane, but now you're not telling yourself if you're within that width. You're going to hit that crossbar, but you're not in that width. And the Timmy Targets, it was amazing because every time I put them up, and I'm talking, these NLL guys would come off the bus, and I remember a couple NLL teams when they first came out, the first thing they asked when they got off the bus was, did you bring those targets? Are those targets in the net? Because they had heard about it from the other teams. And of course they'd be there. And the first thing every single one of them would say is that they're too big. They're too big. And they weren't. They weren't too big. But there's one thing about NLL players and youth when they practice. Youth when they practice will stand still and shoot at the net. A guy who makes the NLL, when he practices game style all the time. So they would be running top flight, taking shots. I'm sure if they were standing still 10 feet away, anybody could hit it. But these guys, when they practice hard and they practice like it's a game. So, but it was funny because a lot of them were like, every single one of them were like, oh, those are way too big. When they were leaving and getting on the bus, they didn't say they were too big. And we gave each one of those teams targets that they took home. And, that hence most of our sales, are for those targets, are 80% of them related to pros that do camps and stuff like that. And they're just great if you don't, the goalies in field lacrosse, that's a lot of wear and tear on those guys. And they're just great in terms of putting a target in the net that give you a visual feedback as to whether you're hitting it. And you can't fool yourself. If you hit it, it's going to catch it. And that's the other thing is it allows you to have games and stuff like that, where rights versus left and they're shooting. And, the big thing about the Timmy Targets is it has the ability to retain the balls in the pouch. You don't just hit it with the first one and then the next one that hit it, sends that next ball sky high. In order for that to happen, it's rare. But what you have to do is take an underhand rip that hits just under the crossbar, and then the balls will pop out. But that shot's rare. That's But that's other than that, it catches the ball, and it's it gives, what it does, as I hear from all the parents that give it to their kids, is it gives them that feeling that they scored a goal. It's one thing to walk up to an empty net and throw a ball into it. And as kids, we all do it, and you do have that feeling of scoring a goal. But with these targets, it's just that extra little thing that when it catches it, you feel that pride that that feeling you get when you score a goal. And so it adds interest, keeps guys going. Well, that
Yeah.
is the one thing about the Timmy Targets is you're at the end of a practice. When I first had the prototypes, whether it was University of Toronto or one of the pro teams I was working with, there were times I had to get going, and these guys didn't want to stop shooting. That happened many times, and I mean, some of them would want, especially pros. Those guys, when they get into a drill, it's nothing for them to take shooting practice for an hour after practice to tune in something. I've got videos of guys that as I'm pulling out of the stadium are doing that, and it's incredible because I love that work ethic. That's how you get to pro.
Yeah. Well, and everybody here, if you guys go to shop.bclax.com, you guys can look at all their products, and there's a lot of good stuff up there. There's the Timmy Targets. There's all the mesh, the string. There's even they offer stick stringing classes. So you guys should definitely check that out.
Last year we started with the stick stringing classes, and an absolute hit. We're going to be starting those up again in the next month or so, and we do it at the Toronto Rock Athletic Center. So a top-notch facility. They have a great classroom atmosphere, and Marc and Joelle, when it comes to stringing, they admire other people's work, as much as they love their own, and they're very into stringing and everything that's going on, and they always put their blue collar twist on it, which to me simplifies it and makes it easier because it's not a complicated thing. Like for example, one of the things that really frustrated me the second I saw it come out was that that top string where it hanged like 2 inches off the top.
Yeah.
And all these people putting up videos that are showing people the strung head where the top string is that 2 inch. I can't remember what the name of it was, but and sure enough, there at the time there was one pro using it, but now even that guy doesn't use it. And what a bad advice to give somebody new to the game. Like what was that? Like I mean, I understand that you want to put up a video and get views, but put up something that's going to help people. Don't put up that stuff. Nobody is using that, and that's because it was useless. It was terrible. So with Marc and Joelle, we're going to start putting up videos, and we would have done it earlier. But for me, I kind of got launched into the idea of not being so nervous around social media because I got asked to do some color commentating, and I did the color commentary of the exhibition games with the Toronto Rock this year. I've done all 7 games of a Man Cup with Steven Stamp. And for me, I got used to being in front of the camera. And with Marc and Joelle, they're very humble. They're very shy. They know what they're talking about. But you have that factor of what's going on this internet. That every time I put something up, I'm attacked. I mean, I don't allow comments to go up on some of our social medias because I don't want somebody who's 10-year-old to go on and read hate speech. And that's what some of these comments are, hate speech. And and so I take that into account, and and for Marc and Joelle, they just it's unfortunate. The lacrosse world would have got to know them much sooner if it wasn't for the fact that these people were out there doing those sort of things, because it's something that until you accept the fact that these aren't real people. This is very likely somebody who's been paid to do this sitting at a desk and does it professionally.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with it. And so Marc and Joelle are about to start putting up some stringing videos, and they got great advice because their sticks are always simple and functional. It's and just by the sheer fact they've strung more sticks for pros used in pro lacrosse games than any other stringers last decade. There's only one reason, and that's because they got a wide variety of what they know. But they're great. So the stick stringing classes, we're going to be putting those back up, and I can tell you we've already done it. And I remember when we did our first class, because we're not public speakers, Marc and Joelle, and Marc blew the doors off. Marc should be a public speaker because at the end of it, I said to myself, if we get a 5 out of 10, if I can walk out of this room at the end of this day and said we get a 5 out of 10 for this class, then I'll be happy because we can build on that. And after the class was done, I was like 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10, Marc. It was Marc and Joelle. It was absolutely awesome. Everybody there enjoyed it. We have people travel 8 hours from Philadelphia who have written back saying worth the trip. It's I strongly suggest getting into those classes, because the simple fact is this: is if you know how to string your own sticks, you will be a better lacrosse player for it.
Yeah, and now I'm looking at your Facebook page, which is Blue Collar Lacrosse, and I am reading like these trolls. I mean, yeah, I don't know, like most of their comments to you guys are very troll like. I mean, they attack your character, they attack like just like insults rather than making a valid comment.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
and they
I don't
take
know how
you.
you take those seriously when they attack your character and stuff.
Well, I do want to say this. Facebook, of all the social medias, has done the best to try to eliminate trolls, to try to verify that the person on the other end of that is a real person. It's not perfect, but I clap my hands to Facebook because they've done the best job. If you go to our Instagram page, oh, you wouldn't believe what the words that and unfortunately, and like I said, we're not social media experts. I've lost the password for that social media page, so they've had carte blanche on it, and some of the comments get pretty bad with the Facebook. I mean, as long as you don't swear or anything like that, I don't eliminate your comment. But there's I can tell you, I would have no problem pulling out hundreds and hundreds of comments made on social media, whether it is the YouTube channel and stuff like that, that I've had to eliminate because they go beyond just insulting. They go to hate speech. They they turn into hate speech, and by
Yeah,
definition hate speech, and it's a sad state of affairs because what people, and this is the whole thing, what people have to realize is there's nobody who's that wound up about a product that they're going to attack somebody. The only people that are doing this and attacking you are people getting paid to do it, or somebody who is benefiting monetarily from it. There's simply no other reason that this would be happening. So these trolls aren't real. They're just unfortunately what has come with one of the greatest inventions of this century that allows me to talk to you from the East Coast, you on the West Coast, and everybody in between to hear from us. But unfortunately, we're going to have to put up with some of the filth that gets on here.
yeah. I mean, just to point something out too, it's like, when somebody when there's a bunch of 1-star reviews, it's and they're all in a row. That's an attack. That's an attack on a company to make them look bad. And that's when you went back to like when you buy views. People nowadays, they look at the ratings, they look at the views, and they automatically believe it without even thinking, well, those could be troll accounts, well, those could be bot views. I mean, it looks like the ratings would be much higher on the Facebook page if there weren't these trolls doing that, just purposely trying to downrate it. I mean,
And
people need to wisen up.
and as I was saying earlier, it's half the troll who's at fault, and it's half the viewer who's at fault. If you go onto a lot of these people that make these troll comments, if you go onto their profiles, you'll end up seeing that, like I said, they go from fairy to being troll. And what you'll end up seeing is a whole load of stick heads, photo after photo of stick heads, pieces of mesh. I love this brand of mesh, blah, blah, blah. I just played with this. It's awesome. And, the photo of the person is so vague that not even the CIA could find this guy. And,
Yeah.
they go from promoting the product to attacking other people. And that's what exactly what I can honestly say. You don't hear anybody getting trolled by Marc Mesh or Blue Collar Lacrosse because we don't pay anybody to do it. And we would never get into that practice ourselves. The reason we're getting attacked is just, that's, I guess that's what happens. And when you're at the top, people try to knock you off. And unfortunately, these tactics, the tactics are brutal. They really are.
Yeah. I mean, me personally, being in the public eye with YouTube and podcasting and playing lacrosse and stuff, I've had my share of really bad times with trolls where I even had to get the police involved. I mean, last year and also 2014, I believe it was one guy, and we pretty much know who it was. I mean, he was making so many fake accounts on YouTube, on Facebook. He was taking every possible kind of Gmail account I could have for my name. So he was getting like Jonathan Lawrence Namer at gmail.com. He was taking every possibility, and then he was emailing thousands of people in the lacrosse world and just like acting as me and making me like have like arguments with people, and like people were contacting me, and I'm like, it's an attack, and it just kept going on, and it sucks.
Yeah, it really does, and I can't state it enough. The saddest part about it is this we're trying to grow this game, and you got these people, the same people that sit there and talk about how much they want to grow the game and how much they love it, are essentially the same entity that's ruining it, and
Yeah.
it's brutal. It really is. It's but these things, they have their ways of coming back, and lacrosse, it's a strong fiber community. Unfortunately, a lot of people are new to the game, so they turn to the internet for this information, and they either get blatantly lied to, misled, or even worse, attacked, and all because of their point of view. Like Jonny Vegas, your nickname there, you must be a gambler, because why, with our history, are we not being interviewed by Inside Lacrosse? Why are we not on the Total Lacrosse Network? Like,
Yeah.
they got these companies on that don't even put a drop in the bucket compared to what we've done with pro teams and what we've done for this game. Show me another company that has a patent. We got a couple of them.
Yeah.
And we have more coming. We're innovative. We're research and development. We're the ones that did this, but you don't see them interviewing us. Nope, you don't.
Yeah.
In fact, they don't even put our name up on their site anymore. And that's that's Jonny. I give you credit. It's great that you're having me on, and eventually word's going to get out, because I can tell you this: the one thing I have learned with social media is, wow, have we got power? We put stuff up and it gets some major hits, and it's so. While it took us a little while to get into this social media game, I think we're getting the hang of it, and just give us a little more time. We're gonna be up to scratch.
Yeah. And I definitely invite everybody that's going to watch this to share, to leave a comment on the YouTube page, or if you see it on Facebook, leave a comment. Leave the best comments that I reply to are the constructive criticism comments. All right. We want to see something like, if you've got a legitimate gripe or something, put some thought into the comment, and if it's not attacking, if it's actually got some weight to it, we'll respond to it. But social media, like we said, it's got the good and it's got the bad, and we definitely want to get this message out here about this this whole topic that we're going over with this, and share, like. The likes really mean a lot, guys. If you like what you're seeing, like it. All right. And then also, I want you guys to check out Tim's videos. You can check them out on Blue Collar Lax's Facebook page, and there's one that was on January 17th, and
Jonny, our YouTube page, not being a social media company, we had a YouTube page of Blue Collar Lacrosse, and that has some videos up. We got John Tavares, String and Stick for John Tavares, an interview with Ryan Benesh, Sean Williams, and stuff like that. Some stuff that tells you information about the product. But again, when I uploaded a Chrome, got the latest version, it wiped out all my passwords. So we're unable to get to that account. That's just floating out there in YouTube, cyberspace. But now we have Marc Mesh TV, and Marc Mesh TV is where these people got to go. If they like this, if they like getting the straight goods, and that's where you got to go, because we're like I said, we're going to start putting up videos of Marc and Joel giving stringing advice. There's actually a great video up on Marc Mesh TV already of Marc Leveille making a cat gut for Nick Rose's wooden stick. The professional goaltenders in the summertime in Canada are allowed to use a wooden goalie stick. They do so because it has a much bigger area, but there's very few people that can string a wooden goalie stick and restore a wooden goalie stick. Marc Leveille can do it all. He can restore it and make a cat gut out of nothing but our sidewalls with the 440-pound break strength and polyurethane, I believe it is. And he makes and you get to see the skill, because it's a little bit out of the box, but you get to see, like, when it comes to making one of these things, in terms of a stringer, you can't beat Marc Leveille. Like, he's there's not a knot on this planet that he doesn't know. At least that's my opinion. He wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I've never seen it blows me away how many different knots there are and how many different situations, like how that his talent for stringing and using his hands is out of this world. And that's a great video that gives you insight on that. And we're having a contest to get a stick to win a gate torque, NHSF legal on that video. If you put in your comments 3 stick heads that you like, and what we're going to do is we're going to, on February 29th, we're going to have a draw, and somebody's going to win that gate torque with a 20 millimeter. And on top of that, if we string the stick that you name, all those people are going to be put into a pool, and you'll win the stick that we string in that video. So, or you can win that stick that we string in that video. So, there's 2 chances of winning, and I strongly suggest going there and checking that out, because it is a great, while it's not the stringing of a plastic head, we're going to be putting those up. It really does show you, like, Marc can do anything with a lacrosse stick, including, his profession before was working with wood. So when it comes to restoring a wooden lacrosse stick, he's taken some sticks that, very, very few people would know how to restore a stick like that and get it back up to scratch, so that you can put it into a professional lacrosse game where these guys are shooting from less than 10 yards out. Most of them are breaking 90 miles per hour. And this stick's got a box lacrosse goalie sees upwards of 50 to 60 shots in a game. And I would say a good 50% of those are of that, a rip from inside variety.
Yeah. Well, I definitely thank you for being on the show, and we'll definitely do more of these too, more of these collaboration shows between our channels, and I also I'll definitely give you the link if you want to upload this to your channel too. I don't mind it being on both channels, and but we'll do more of these. Yeah,
I'd appreciate that, and the person who should be sitting in this seat is Marc Leveille and Joel Leveille. Those are the guys that, I really think you'd have a great interview with. But I've enjoyed this. I'll come back anytime, Jonny, and I really thank you for doing this, because, like I said, for the mainstream media, for the most part, is ignoring us. That's just a simple fact, and going out of their way to ignore us. And you can't ignore us, because we're still around. It's I'll tell you, every day, if not every other day, Marc Leveille has a professional lacrosse player come by his garage to get a stick strung for himself or a stick strung for a teammate. And, eventually we're going to weather this storm, and people are going to find out the real deal, because time after time, and we get the emails that can prove it, time after time, people that have tried these different products and try Marc Mesh just can't believe it. They can't believe the difference that it makes. It's the real deal. I'll tell you, if Marc Mesh was made from a polypropylene when we started with the pros, it would have been successful, but nowhere near what it is, today. Every bit of that product is Marc Leveille's baby, and he made sure that every single bit of it was perfect before he came out with it. And that's why, like this Gator Grit mesh, we've had guys in the NLL use it. We've had guys in NCAA Division I use it and score with it. And, I even get emails from guys in MLL that know the person who has it and have asked for it. But the reason we haven't put it out yet is because we haven't been able to bond the sand to the surface good enough. I'm sorry, there's 2 things. We just haven't been able to find that happy medium. We're either able to bond the sand to the surface, but it does damage to the nylon netting itself, but that stuff will never disappear, or we're able to do it where we're not damaging the nylon and we're able to get it on there, but it doesn't last long enough. We're not happy with that. We're not going to sell somebody something that's a placebo. If you can put something out that lasts a season, then fantastic. But like I said, we've had it out there. It's already had success at the pro level, at the top NCAA level, and even to the point where we've gotten emails from other pros that have asked us if they can get their hands on this. But it would be so easy to come out with this, and all the sales that we would get from people that had to try the next best thing. But what people got to understand is Marc Mesh hasn't changed since it started in 2008, because there's nothing to change about it. Everything about it was fine-tuned long before it came to market. And that speaks for the type of person that Marc Leveille is. He wouldn't put his name on it unless he was happy with it. And I can tell you, he takes a lot of pride in these things. To convince Marc to put his name on that mesh, that was probably one of my hardest jobs. because
Yeah.
I wanted his name on that mesh. He didn't want it. You know what I mean? But that's the type of pride he takes in stuff. And, you know, we're not going to come out with that Gator Grit mesh until it's ready. I can tell you it can happen. But, you know, again, what's separating us from completing this is, you know, if we had a little more money for research and development, we'd be doing it. That's it would be out there already.
Well, I definitely want to try it when you guys do come out with it because it sounds awesome and very innovative. I've never even heard of that type of thing before, so I definitely want to try it, and I'll do a review video for you guys to put up on YouTube.
I very much appreciate that, and I think the American viewers will be happy to note that in order to get it's called silica. In order to get a silica, the purest silica on earth comes from the U.S. I won't tell you what state, but it comes from the U.S. So truly a collaboration there.
Yeah, cool. Well, I thank you again for being on the show, and everybody make sure you guys stay tuned for the next episodes and whatever episodes I have on my channel. Subscribe to youtube.com/Ministry of Lacrosse. I'm Jonny Vegas, reminding you to grow your game, and remember, to grow, you got to play. Happy lacrossing, everybody. Until next time.
Wall ball, baby.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, wall ball, guys.
Wall ball. Thank you, Jonny. Thank you so much for having me.